It was a bright, sunny Saturday morning. The kind of day where the sky is blue, the birds are singing, and everything feels happy. In a little house on Maple Street, 12-year-old Timmy Jackson was outside in his front yard. He wasn't playing ball or riding his bike like some kids might. Nope, Timmy was busy watering his little garden bush. This wasn't just any bush. It was small, a little scruffy, and kind of messy looking, like it was trying super hard to grow but wasn't quite there yet. Now, to most people, it might look silly or unimportant, but to Timmy, oh, that bush was special, really special. See, Timmy didn't just find this bush at a store or pick it out of someone else's yard. He planted it himself. Yup, all by himself. Well, almost. His dad helped a little. They dug a hole together last spring, dropped the tiny ascending the little plant into the dirt and covered it up with soil. Timmy's dad showed him how to pat the ground down so the bush would stay safe and snug. After that, Timmy took care of it every single day. He'd grab his little green watering can, the one with a long spout, and sprinkle water on the bush. Not too much, not too little, just the right amount. He'd talk to it sometimes, too, like it was his friend. "Grow big and strong," he'd say, smiling at it. That bush was his pride and joy. It made him feel proud, like he'd done something important all on his own. Timmy loved standing in the yard, looking at his bush. It wasn't tall or fancy. It didn't have bright flowers or shiny leaves, but it was his. Every time he saw it, he remembered that day with his dad, how they laughed and got dirt all over their hands. It was a happy memory, one he didn't want to forget. The bush wasn't perfect, but that's why he liked it. It was real. It was growing little by little, just like him. But not everyone thought Timmy's bush was so great. Oh no, someone else was watching it too, and that someone, they weren't happy about it at all. Across the street, in a big white house with perfect grass and super neat flowers, lived Mrs. Karen Baxter. Everyone in the neighborhood knew her. She was the boss of the HOA. That's the group that makes rules for all the houses, like what color your mailbox can be or how short your grass has to stay. Mrs. Karen loved rules. She loved them more than anything. And she loved telling people when they broke them. Mrs. Karen wasn't like Timmy's dad, who was nice and funny. She didn't smile much. She always carried a clipboard under her arm like it was glued there. On that clipboard, she wrote down everything she didn't like. A bike left in a driveway, she'd write it down. A trash can out too long, she'd write that down too. And she'd frown while she did it, a big grumpy frown that made her look like she'd just eaten a sour lemon. The kids on Maple Street called her HOA Karen behind her back. They'd whisper it and giggle because it was true. She was always sticking her nose where it didn't belong. That sunny Saturday morning, Mrs. Karen was standing on her porch. She had her clipboard in one hand and her other hand on her hip. Her eyes were sharp, like a hawk looking for something to swoop down on. And guess what she saw? Timmy's little bush. To her, that bush wasn't cute or special. It wasn't a kid's project or a happy memory. Nope. To Mrs. Curran, that bush was a problem. A big, messy, scruffy problem. She squinted at it from across the street. Too tall, she muttered to herself. Too wild, too green. She didn't like anything that didn't look perfect, and Timmy's bush, it was far from perfect in her eyes. She tapped her pen on her clipboard, making little clicking sounds. Click, click, click. She was thinking hard. To her, that bush wasn't just a plant. It was a crime, a rule-breaking, neighborhood-ruining crime. She couldn't let it stay like that. Oh no, she had to do something about it. But here's the thing, Mrs. Curran didn't know everything. She thought she did. She thought she saw it all with her hawk eyes and her clipboard. But she didn't. That morning, something was going on that she had no clue about. Timmy wasn't just a kid watering his bush all by himself. Nope. He had a secret, a big one. Want to know what it was? I'll give you a little hint. Timmy wasn't as alone as she thought he was. There was more to this story than Mrs. Curran could ever guess. Picture this, Timmy standing there holding his watering can with water dripping onto the dirt. He looked so small in his big yard with his bush that wasn't much taller than his knees. The sun was shining, making everything bright and warm. Across the street, Mrs. Curran was glaring, her frown getting deeper every second. She didn't like messes. She didn't like things that didn't fit her rules. And that bush, it broke every rule she could think of, at least in her head. Timmy didn't notice her at first. He was too busy humming a little song to himself. Drip, drop, he sang softly, watching the water soak into the ground. He liked how the dirt turned dark when it got wet. He liked how his bush seemed to stand a tiny bit taller after he watered it. It made him feel good, like he was helping it grow strong. He didn't care if it wasn't perfect. To him, it was the best bush in the world. But Mrs. Curran, she cared a lot. She started walking down her steps, her flip-flops making loud slapping noises on the wood. Slap, slap, slap. She was coming closer, her eyes locked on that bush like it was the worst thing she'd ever seen. She didn't know what was waiting for her. She didn't know that this sunny Saturday was about to get a whole lot crazier than she expected. Timmy's yard was quiet except for the sound of water dripping and his little song. The bush sat there, small and scruffy, minding its own business. But Mrs. Curran wasn't going to let it be. She crossed the street, her clipboard ready, her frown ready, her rules ready. She thought she was in charge. She thought she could tell Timmy what to do. She thought she had all the power. But here's the fun part. She was wrong. So wrong. That bush wasn't just a bush. And Timmy wasn't just a kid. Something big was about to happen, something Mrs. Curran never saw coming. What do you think it was? Was she about to make a huge mistake? Was Timmy hiding something she'd never guess? Stick around, because this story is just getting started and it's going to get really, really good. Imagine you're right there with Timmy, standing in the yard. You can feel the sun on your face. You can hear the water dripping. You can see Mrs. Curran marching over, all grumpy and bossy. What's going to happen next? Is she going to yell at him? Is she going to try to pull up his bush? Or is something else about to surprise her? And you don't go anywhere, because this is one wild ride you won't want to miss. Timmy didn't know it yet, but that little bush was about to change everything. Mrs. Curran didn't know it either, but she was walking right into something she couldn't control. The day was sunny and bright, but a storm was brewing, a funny, crazy storm that would leave everyone talking. All because of a kid, a bush, and a secret no one saw coming. The sunny Saturday morning was about to get loud, really loud. Mrs. Karen Baxter stormed out of her big white house like a tornado on flip-flops. Her feet slapped the pavement hard, slap, 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 like tiny thunderclaps booming down the street. She was mad, super mad. And what was she mad about? Timmy's little bush. That small, scruffy bush in his front yard that he loved so much. To her, it was the worst thing ever. And that bush is an eyesore, she yelled, her voice sharp and loud enough to wake up the whole neighborhood. She pointed at it with her finger like the bush had just said something mean to her. Her face was all scrunched up, her eyes narrow and angry. She didn't even look at Timmy at first. Nope, all she could see was that bush, his little plant that wasn't tall or fancy but meant everything to him. To her, it wasn't a bush. It was a big, ugly problem. Timmy stood there in his yard, holding his green watering can. Water dripped from the spout, drip, 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 making little wet spots in the dirt. He froze like a statue when Karen started shouting. Most kids would have been scared. Most kids would have dropped the can and run inside to hide. Maybe they'd cry or call for their mom. But not Timmy. Oh no, Timmy was different. He didn't move. He didn't say a word. He just stood there, quiet as a mouse, watching her yell. Karen wasn't done. She kept going. It's against the rule, she snapped, her voice getting louder. She waved her clipboard in the air like it was a magic wand that could make the bush disappear. Too tall, too messy, too green. She said green like it was a bad word, like the bush had picked the worst color on purpose just to make her mad. To Karen, everything had to be perfect. The grass had to be short, the flowers had to be neat, and bushes, they had to follow her rules or they didn't belong. She stopped pointing and reached into her pocket. Out came her phone. She held it up, her fingers moving fast like she was on a mission. I'm calling the cops, she said, glaring at the bush and then at Timmy. Yup, you heard that right. She was calling the police over a bush. To her, that little plant wasn't just breaking rules, it was an emergency. A 911 emergency. Can you believe it? Most people call the cops for big stuff, like if someone's hurt or something's stolen. But Karen, she thought a bush was bad enough to need sirens and flashing lights. Timmy still didn't move. The watering can stayed in his hand, dripping slowly. Drip, drip, drip. The wet spots in the dirt grew bigger, but he didn't run, he didn't cry, he didn't even look scared. Instead, something funny happened. A tiny smirk, a little smile showed up on his face. It wasn't big, you might not even notice it if you weren't looking close, but it was there. A snaky, quiet smirk like he knew something Karen didn't. And guess what? He did. Oh yes, Timmy had a secret, and it was a good one. See, Karen thought she was the boss of everything. She thought she could yell and point and make everyone do what she wanted. She thought she saw it all with her sharp eyes and her clipboard full of rules. But she missed something big. Down the street, just a little way from Timmy's house, there was a police car. Yup, a real police car with blue and red lights on top and a shiny badge on the side. It was parked there, quiet and still, like it was waiting for something. Karen didn't see it. She was too busy shouting and waving her phone around. But it was there, and it wasn't just any police car. Oh no, it had a special reason for being on Maple Street that morning. Why was it there? What was it waiting for? You're going to find out soon, I promise. But for now, let's keep watching, because things were getting tense, really tense. Karen was stomping closer to Timmy's yard, her flip-flops still slapping the ground. Slap, slap, slap. She looked like a storm cloud ready to burst. Timmy stayed where he was, his sneakers planted in the grass. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. That little smirk said it all. He wasn't worried. Not one bit. Karen held her phone to her ear now. "Hello, yes, 911, she said, her voice loud and bossy. "I need the police right now. There's a boy breaking HOA rules with a bush. It's awful. Hurry." She sounded so serious, like the bush was about to jump up and cause trouble. Timmy tilted his head a little, watching her. The water kept dripping from his can. Drip, drip, drip. He looked calm, like he was just waiting for something to happen. And something was going to happen. Something Karen didn't expect at all. The air felt heavy, like before a big rain. You could almost feel the fight brewing. Karen versus Timmy. The bossy lady with her rules versus the quiet kid with his bush. Neighbors started peeking out their windows. Curtains moved a little and eyes watched from behind the glass. They'd seen Karen yell before. She was always mad about something: a dog barking, a car parked wrong, a kid riding a bike too fast. But this was new. Calling the cops on a bush. That was wild even for her. Now Timmy's bush just sat there in the dirt, small and scruffy. It didn't know it was causing all this fuss. It didn't know Karen hated it so much. It was just a plant doing its best to grow. But to Karen it was more than that. It was a challenge, a test. If she let this bush stay, what else would people do? Plant more messy bushes? Let their grass grow long? No way. She had to stop it now. She had to win. But Timmy, he wasn't playing her game. He wasn't arguing or shouting back. He didn't need to. That police car down the street, it was his secret weapon. Karen didn't know it yet, but she was walking right into something she couldn't control. She thought she was the big boss, the queen of Maple Street. She thought she could scare Timmy and make him rip up his bush. But she was wrong, so wrong. The tension kept building. Karen's voice got louder on the phone. "Yes, it's an emergency," she said. "This bush is ruining the neighborhood." She paced back and forth, her flip-flops slapping faster. Slap, slap, slap. She didn't see the police car. She didn't see Timmy's smirk growing just a tiny bit bigger. She didn't see the neighbors whispering to each other, wondering what would happen next. Timmy's hand tightened on the watering can, not because he was scared, oh no, because he was ready for what you'll see soon. But let's just say this, Karen thought she was about to teach Timmy a lesson. She thought the cops would come running to help her. She thought she'd get her way like always. But the truth was hiding right around the corner, and it was going to be a big surprise. The sun was still shining, the birds were still singing, but the quiet morning wasn't quiet anymore. Karen's yelling filled the air, bouncing off the houses. Timmy stood still, his bush wet and happy from the water. The police car waited, silent and sneaky. And the fight, it was just beginning. Karen versus Timmy. Rules versus a kid who wouldn't back down. Who would win? What was Timmy hiding? Why wasn't he scared? Stick around, because this is where it gets fun. Karen thought she had all the power. She thought she could snap her fingers or her flip-flops and make everything go her way. But Timmy, he had something up his sleeve, something big, something that would turn this whole crazy morning upside down. What do you think it was? Can you guess? Don't go anywhere, because the best part is coming up next. Things were getting wild on Maple Street. Mrs. Karen Baxter was in full boss mode now. She had her phone pressed to her ear, dialing 911 like it was the most important call she'd ever made. Her voice was loud, super loud, like a big bell ringing through the whole neighborhood. "Yes, hello," she shouted into the phone. "There's a boy breaking HOA rules with an illegal bush. Send someone quick." She said illegal bush like it was some sneaky criminal hiding in Timmy's yard. She wanted the police to come fast, like the bush was about to run away or something. Timmy Jackson, the 12-year-old with the watering can, didn't say a single word. Not one. He didn't yell back. He didn't cry. He didn't even look mad. Nope, he just kept watering his little bush like Karen wasn't even there. The water dripped out of his green can, drip, 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 making the dirt all wet and dark. He moved the spout back and forth nice and slow, like it was any other sunny day. To him maybe it was, but to Karen, oh no, this was war. The neighbors couldn't help but watch. Curtains twitched in the windows up and down the street. Faces peeked out, eyes big and curious. "Poor kid," they whispered to each other behind the glass. "Karen's at it again." They'd seen her get mad before. She yelled about dogs barking too loud. She complained about trash cans left out too long. One time she even told a kid his skateboard was too noisy on the sidewalk. Yup, that was Karen, always finding something to fuss about. But this time it was Timmy's turn, and his little bush, it was the bad guy in her story. Karen paced back and forth in front of Timmy's yard, her flip-flops slapping the ground. Slap, slap, slap. She held the phone tight, talking fast. "Yes, it's an emergency," she said. "This bush is breaking all the rules. It's too tall, too messy, it's ruining everything." She waved her other hand in the air, pointing at the bush like it might hear her and feel ashamed. But the bush didn't care. It just sat there, small and scruffy, soaking up Timmy's water. Timmy kept watering. His face was calm, like he was in his own little world. That tiny smirk, the one he'd had before, was still there, hiding in the corner of his mouth. It was so small you might miss it if you blinked, but it was there. He didn't look scared, he didn't look worried, he looked ready, ready for what? Oh, you'll see, something big was coming, and Timmy knew it. Then something weird happened, really weird. Down the street where that police car was parked, the doors opened. Two cops stepped out. Yup, real cops with uniforms and badges and everything. They were tall and strong, and they started walking toward Timmy's house. Their boots made quiet thumps on the pavement, thump, 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 as they got closer. The sun glinted off their shiny badges, making them sparkle a little. They didn't look mad, they didn't look in a hurry. They just walked nice and steady, like they had all the time in the world. Karen didn't see them yet. Nope, she was too busy yelling into her phone. Hurry up, she told the 911 lady. This boy won't listen, the bush has to go. Her voice was so loud it bounced off the houses. She turned her back to the street, waving her clipboard around like a teacher scolding a class. She was all caught up in her big plan: call the cops, scare Timmy, get rid of the bush. She thought she was winning. She thought she was in charge. But Timmy, he saw the cops. Oh yes, he did. He glanced over at them, just a quick little look with his eyes. And then get this, he gave them a tiny wave. A wave like you wave to a friend at school. It was so small, just a wiggle of his fingers, but it happened. Wait a second, did Timmy know them? Were they his friends or something? Why wasn't he scared? Most kids would freak out if cops showed up. Most kids would think, oh no, I'm in trouble. But not Timmy. He waved, he smiled. What was going on? The neighbors saw it too. The ones peeking out their windows gasped a little. Did you see that? One whispered to her husband. He waved at the cops. Another said, her eyes wide. They leaned closer to the glass, trying to figure it out. Karen was still shouting, still packing, still clueless. Slap, slap, slap went her flip-flops. Yes, I need help right now, she told the phone. She didn't turn around. She didn't look. She had no idea the cops were already there, walking up behind her. Timmy kept watering his bush. Drip, drip, drip. The water made a little puddle now, soaking into the dirt. His hands were steady, like he wasn't even thinking about Karen. That smirk got a tiny bit bigger, like he was holding in a laugh. He knew something good, something that was going to change everything. The cops were closer now, thump, 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 their boots loud enough to hear if you listened close. But Karen, she didn't listen. She was too busy being loud herself. The air felt funny, like it does before something big happens. The neighbors held their breath. The birds stopped singing for a second, like they were watching too. Karen's voice kept going, sharp and bossy. This neighborhood has rules, she said into the phone. We can't have kids doing whatever they want. She sounded so sure, so certain she was right. She thought the cops would come roaring in with sirens, ready to back her up. She thought Timmy would have to rip up his bush and say sorry. Now she thought she'd win, like she always did. But those cops, they weren't running, they weren't mad, they were calm, walking closer every second. And Timmy, he wasn't scared of them. He wasn't hiding. He waved at them like they were old buddies. What was he hiding? Why weren't they yelling at him? The plot was getting thicker, friends, thicker than a milkshake on a hot day. The cops were almost there now, just a few steps away from Timmy's yard. Their shadows stretched out on the grass, long and dark in the sunlight. Karen still didn't see them. She turned in a circle, her phone glued to her ear, her flip-flops slapping away. Slap, slap, slap. Yes, it's on Maple Street, she said. You need to hurry. She was so caught up in her yelling that she missed it all. The cops, the wave, the secret. Now Timmy's bush sat there, wet and happy. It didn't know it was the star of this big fuss. It didn't know Karen wanted it gone. It was just a bush, growing little by little, thanks to Timmy's care. But it was more than that now. It was the reason for this whole crazy scene. And the cops, they were the key. The big clue. Why were they here? Why did Timmy wave? What did he know that Karen did? The neighbors kept watching. One kid pressed his nose to the window, fogging up the glass. Are the cops gonna arrest her? He asked his mom. SHH, she said. Let's see. They couldn't look away, no one could. Something was building up like a balloon about to pop. Karen thought she was the queen of Maple Street. She thought she could boss everyone around. But Timmy, he had a trick up his sleeve, a big one. The cops stopped walking. They were right behind Karen now, close enough to hear her yelling. Timmy looked up at them, his smirk turning into a real smile. Karen didn't turn around. She didn't know. She was still shouting, still packing, still thinking she was in control. But she was not anymore. The story was about to twist, and it was going to be good, really good. What was Timmy hiding? Why were the cops here? Stick around, because the answers are coming and they're going to surprise you. The sunny Saturday morning on Maple Street was about to get wilder than ever. The two cops, tall, strong, and wearing shiny badges, finally reached Timmy's yard. They stopped right at the edge of the grass, their boots quiet now after all that thumping. It was perfect timing, too. Mrs. Karen Baxter had just hung up her phone. She'd finished yelling at 911, telling them to hurry up and come get rid of Timmy's bush. She put the phone in her pocket and turned to Timmy with a big, smug look on her face. That's the kind of look someone gets when they think they've won, like a kid who just got the last piece of candy. See, she said to Timmy, her voice loud and proud. The police are coming and you're in big trouble. She crossed her arms, her clipboard still tucked under one elbow. She stood there, staring at Timmy, waiting for him to cry or run or say sorry. She thought she'd scared him good. She thought the cops would show up any second, sirens blaring, ready to back her up and make Timmy rip up his little bush. Oh, she was so sure of herself, so sure she was the boss. But then, bam, everything changed. Karen turned around to point at the bush again, probably to show the world how awful it was, and that's when she saw them. The two cops. They were standing right behind her, so close she could have bumped into them if she took one step back. Her eyes got huge, like two big saucers. Her mouth opened wide and her jaw dropped so fast it looked like it might fall right off her face and hit the grass. She didn't say a word, she couldn't. Yeah, she just stared, frozen like a statue, her flip-flops quiet for once. Timmy stood there, still holding his watering can. Water dripped from it, drip, 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 making little puddles in the dirt. He didn't look surprised. He didn't look scared. That tiny smirk he'd had all along. It was still there, but now it was growing into a real smile. The cops looked at Karen, then at Timmy, then back at Karen. They didn't look mad. They didn't look like they were here to yell at anyone. They just stood there, calm and cool, like this was all normal. "Ma'am," one of the officers said. His voice was deep and steady, like a teacher talking to a kid who got caught sneaking cookies. "We're already here, and we're not here for the bush." He crossed his arms, his badge shining in the sun. Karen blinked fast, like her eyes were trying to catch up with her brain. She opened her mouth to say something, then closed it again. She looked confused, like really, really confused. Her head tilted a little, and she stared at the cops like they'd just popped out of nowhere. Timmy finally spoke up. Yup, after all that quiet, he decided it was time to talk. His voice was calm and clear, like he was just telling someone the weather. "They're my uncles," he said, looking right at Karen. "They stopped by to say hi." He shrugged a little, like it was no big deal, but oh, it was a big deal. A huge deal. The cops weren't strangers. They weren't here because of 911. They were Timmy's family, his uncles. They'd been parked down the street the whole time, just visiting. The cops grinned, big happy grins, like they were in on a funny joke. "Yeah," the other one said, nodding at Timmy. "And we think the bush looks great." He pointed at the little plant, still wet from Timmy's watering can. "Good job, kid," he added, giving Timmy a little wink. The first cop chuckled, a deep laugh that made his shoulders shake. They weren't mad at Timmy. They liked his bush. They thought it was cool. Karen's face, oh boy, it changed fast. First, it went white, like all the color ran away. Then boom, it turned red, redder than a ripe tomato, redder than a stop sign, redder than anything you've ever seen. Her cheeks puffed out a little and her eyes got small and squinty. She'd called 911 on a kid whose uncles were cops over a bush. A bush that the cops didn't even hate. She stood there, her flip-flops stuck to the ground, her clipboard hanging limp under her arm. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know what to do. And then it happened. The neighbors, who'd been watching from their windows this whole time, couldn't hold it in anymore. They burst out laughing, loud, happy laughs that filled the air. Curtains flew open all the way now. People stepped onto their porches, pointing and giggling. She called the cops on his uncles. One lady shouted, holding her sides. Over a bush, a man yelled, slapping his knee. Kids ran outside, laughing so hard they could barely stand. The whole street turned into one big laugh party. Karen heard it all. She turned her head, slow and stiff, looking at the neighbors. Her red face got even redder, if that was possible. She realized something awful. She just made herself the biggest fool on the block. All her yelling, all her bossing, all her rules, they didn't matter now. She thought she was the queen of Maple Street, the one who could tell everyone what to do. But nope, not today. Today she was the silly one, the one everyone was laughing at. Timmy, he just smiled. A big happy smile now. He set his watering can down in the grass and looked at his uncles. "Thanks," he said, quiet and simple. The cops nodded back. "Any time," the first one said. "Nice bush," the other one added, giving Timmy a thumbs up. They weren't here to arrest anyone. They weren't here to help Karen. They were just here to see their nephew, and maybe have a little fun watching this whole crazy thing unfold. Karen's phone slipped a little in her hand. She caught it before it fell, but she didn't put it back in her pocket. She just held it, staring at the cops, then at Timmy, then at the bush. Her jaw was still down, like it forgot how to close. She'd been so sure the police would come rushing in to save her big plan. She'd been so sure Timmy would be in trouble. But now she was the one in a mess. A big, funny mess. The neighbors kept laughing. Karen thought she'd win this time. One kid shouted, jumping up and down. She didn't know, a lady called, wiping tears from her eyes. The sound bounced around, loud and bright, like music on a sunny day. Even the birds seemed to chirp louder, like they were joining in. Timmy's little bush sat there, wet and scruffy, looking proud in its own way. It didn't know it had just turned Karen's day upside down. The cops stepped closer to Timmy, standing on either side of him like big, friendly guards. "You okay, buddy?" the first one asked, ruffling Timmy's hair. "Yup," Timmy said, nodding. "Good," the second one said. "Let us know if she bugs you again." They both looked at Karen, their eyes sharp now, not so grinny anymore. It was a warning, a quiet one, but a warning just the same. Karen gulped. You could see her throat move, like she swallowed something big. Her red face started to cool down a little, but she still looked silly standing there. Her flip-flops, her clipboard, her phone, they all seemed smaller now, less important. She tried to be the big boss, the rule maker, the one who always got her way. But not this time. This time she'd picked the wrong kid and the wrong bush. The street was alive with noise now, laughing, talking, kids running around. Timmy's uncles stayed with him, chatting about the bush like it was the coolest thing ever. "Maybe we should plant one too," one said. "Yeah, we could use some green at our place," the other agreed. Timmy beamed, his smile bigger than the sun. Karen, she just stood there, the laughter ringing in her ears, knowing she'd lost. Big time. This was it, the big moment, the twist no one saw coming. Karen thought she'd called the cops on a rule-breaking kid, but she'd called them on her own mistake. Timmy's uncles were the cops, and they weren't mad at him. They loved him and his bush. Karen was the fool now, and everyone knew it. What a day, what a surprise. Stick around, because this story's not over yet. The big mess on Maple Street was finally calming down, but the cops weren't done yet. They looked at Mrs. Karen Baxter with serious faces. They didn't let her silly 911 call just slide by like it was nothing. Oh no, one of the officers, Timmy's uncle with the deep voice, stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said sternly, like a teacher when you're caught running in the hall. "False 911 calls are serious. You can't just waste our time like that." His eyes were sharp and his arms were crossed. He meant business. Karen's red face went pale for a second. She opened her mouth to talk, but it didn't go well. I didn't mean it's just a bush," she stammered, tripping over her words like she'd tripped over her flip-flops. She tried to explain, waving her clipboard a little, but no one cared. The cops didn't buy it. The neighbors didn't buy it. Even the birds in the trees seemed to chirp like they were saying, "Nope, not true." She'd called 911 over a bush, a little scruffy bush, and everyone knew it was silly. The second cop, Timmy's other uncle, nodded at her. "Go home," he said, his voice firm but not loud. "Leave Timmy alone. If you bother him again, you'll be the one in trouble next time." It was a warning, clear as day. Karen's eyes got big and she clutched her phone tight. She didn't argue. She couldn't. The cops were right and she knew it. She messed up big time. Timmy, he didn't say much. He just picked up his watering can again and went back to his bush. Drip, drip, drip went the water, making the dirt wet and dark. His smile was huge now, bigger than ever, like the sun shining on his face. He didn't need to yell or fight. His uncles had taken care of everything and his bush was safe. He looked at the little plant, all scruffy and green, and gave it a pat. "You're okay," he whispered, like it was his best friend. The neighbors weren't quiet anymore. They cheered, loud and happy. "Way to go, Timmy," one shouted from his porch. "Good job, kid," a lady yelled, clapping her hands. Kids ran out into their yards, jumping and laughing. "The bush won," they chanted like it was a game. Word spread fast, faster than a race car. By lunchtime, everyone on Maple Street knew what happened. Karen called the cops on Timmy, but the cops were his uncles and she lost. Karen didn't stick around. She turned slow, her shoulders drooping like a popped balloon. Her flip-flops went slap, 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 but softer now as she slunk back to her big white house. Her clipboard dangled in her hand, swinging like a sad flag. No more yelling, no more bossing. For once, the HOA queen had lost. She shut her door with a quiet click, and that was it. She was done. And there you have it, friends. That's the story of how a kid and his little bush took down the neighborhood bully. Timmy Jackson, just 12 years old, didn't need to yell or fight or run away. Nope. He just stood there with his watering can, quiet and calm, and let everything unfold. His bush, small, scruffy, and not so fancy, turned out to be the hero of the day. And Mrs. Karen Baxter, the big, bossy HOA queen, she learned she wasn't the boss of everything after all. Pretty cool, right? Now here's the funny thing. The smallest people or even plants can have the biggest surprises. Think about it. Timmy didn't look like a superhero. He didn't have a cape or muscles or a loud voice. He was just a kid who loved his bush. And that bush, it wasn't tall or pretty or covered in flowers. It was messy and green and trying its best. But together, they were stronger than Corinne's rules and her clipboard and her loud flip-flops. They had a secret, Timmy's uncles, the cops, and that secret was enough to turn the whole day upside down. A life like that sometimes, you might feel small. You might think you don't matter much, like a scruffy bush in a big yard. But you've got something special inside you, even if no one sees it right away. Maybe it's a talent or a friend or just a little bit of bravery. And when someone tries to push you around like Corinne did to Timmy, that's when your surprise can shine. You don't have to be loud or mean. You just have to stand tall, stay cool, and let the truth do the talking. That's what Timmy did, and look what happened. He won. So next time someone's being bossy or unfair, think of Timmy. Picture him with his watering can, smiling that tiny smirk, knowing his uncles were close by. You don't need to fight back with big words or fists. Sometimes being quiet and smart is the best way. The truth has a way of coming out, just like the cops walking up behind Corinne. It might take a minute, but it gets there. And when it does, oh boy, it's awesome. What do you think, friends? Could you outsmart a Corinne like that? Could you stand up to a bully with a smile and a secret? I bet you could. You've got your own surprises, your own strength, even if it's hiding right now. Maybe it's a friend who's got your back. Maybe it's something you're good at that no one knows yet. Whatever it is, hold on to it. Keep it close like Timmy kept his bush. One day you'll get your chance to shine and the bullies won't know what hit them. Let me know below, what would you do if a Corinne came after you? Would you stay cool like Timmy? Would you have a trick up your sleeve? I want to hear your ideas. This story's all about little guys winning big, and I think you've got a little guy or girl inside you who's ready to win too. So stand tall, friends, stay cool, and never let a bully tell you your bush or anything else isn't good enough. You're stronger than you think, and the world's going to see it someday.